And as you guys start reaching back to your seats, we had a conversation yesterday, and we talked about the concept of how do you do it all. And I mentioned that I had found this kind of representation of that. We were able to find it this morning to put up on the screen. And I don't want to suggest that this is just, a gender inequality thing or men versus women, but it's almost even I liked some of the conversations that were happening yesterday. We had a lady up on the panel talking about her male coworker was a single father, but I think it also represents just the ability for someone to mobilize out of their own circumstance. And what I've noticed here over the last 36 hours is that conversation of becoming aware of what might be happening in our coworkers' lives, our friends' lives, and around that. But I'm pretty sure in lane number 1, that's Kelly Earnhardt, who found popcorn for her son last night. So as we move on, we're going to head on to the panel that we have called How Do Your Skills Cross Over to Other Careers? I'm your moderator, Amanda Busick, and welcome to stage, please, Miss Connie Nyholm. She is the president of VIR, Virginia International Raceway. She took over that in 1998, leading the growth of track since startup restoration of historic track built in 1957 to one of the top 6 road courses in America. The chair slide. To one of the top 6 road courses in America, according to Car and Driver magazine. Constantly looks for ways to make the race experience better for fans. I can attest to that. I see you walking around picking up trash, parking people. And I recently read in an article in the News and Record that you guys locally have a $197 million economic impact to the area.
So that's only for the community right around us, Danville, Pennsylvania County, Halifax County, which is very, very rural. All my neighbors are cows. So bring in that level of economic development to the area.
Beth Paretta is the president of Paretta Autosports. She's the co-founder of Women in Motorsports North America that launched in conjunction with Lynn St. James last year in 2021. She is a founder, owner, and team principal of Paretta Autosport, the first woman-owned, woman-driven, woman-forward team in IndyCar history. Conceived to shine light on diversity and inclusion to encourage young women to study STEM. Her team launched in 2021 at the Indianapolis 500 with 75% of women team members across all roles. It garnered an incredible 6.5 billion media impressions. Apparently women are popular. She is a former automotive motorsports executive at Aston Martin and Fiat Chrysler and the first woman to lead a performance brand and an OEM in motorsports with FCA, won 3 national championships, board member of the Motorsports Hall of Fame of America, and accolades include a game changer. I'm pretty sure that's how a lot of people in this room would define you, Beth, by Sports Business Journal. Thank you, Beth.
Thank you.
Victoria Thomas is the co-owner and CFO of Kelly Moss Racing, a Porsche-centric brand specializing in custom Porsche builds, along with over 30 years of on-track success. She manages the fiscal end of a team that has produced over 100 podiums and 4 national championships. Hey, Victoria. She has launched KMR Online Race Car Driver Academy during the pandemic with over 70 online lessons on racing. Welcome, Victoria. Gillian Zucker is the president and general manager of the Los Angeles Clippers. She leads all Clipper functions, secured close to $1 billion in partnership revenue for the team and the Intuit Dome, driving industry-leading innovations and advancements in fan experience and sustainability for the new arena. She was previously the president of Auto Club Speedway from 2005 to 2014, more than 25 years of experience in the sports industry, numerous honors including the Los Angeles Magazine's 10 Wonder Women Changing LA, United Nations Women LA as Champion of Change, and the Los Angeles Business Journal Executive of the Year. Multi-year member of the LA Business Journal's LA 500 and the list of most influential people in Los Angeles. Welcome.
Thank you. Great to be here.
So I actually want to start with you, Gillian, because I was reading a little bit of just kind of that process of the transition from Auto Club Speedway to the Los Angeles Clippers, and I believe that you heard or saw that the job was available, and you decided at that moment, that's me. How did you do that?
First of all, I just want to say hello to everybody. It's great to be back at a track and really excited to see such a packed house and so many women who are thriving in careers in motorsports. I too had that opportunity. I feel like everything that has happened in my life is in large part due to the people around me and everything that I learned during my time at International Speedway and NASCAR, and it's great to be back. But yeah, I was, had been in motorsports for 16 years, almost 16 years, and was really looking for, okay, what's next for me? And starting to think about what that might be and having conversations about what that might be with a lot of different people. And I was driving home and I heard on the radio that Steve Ballmer was buying the LA Clippers. And I thought, oh my God, I think that's my job. I just decided it. I remember I walked home and I sat down at the kitchen table and I told my then boyfriend, and now husband, Steve Ballmer's buying the Clippers and I'm going to be the president. And he looked at me and he said, yes, you are. How can I help?
You didn't know Steve at the time.
I did not.
How did you put yourself into his sphere?
Well, a lot of it started 2 years ago, 2 years prior to that, where I had this very good friend who at the time I was really, really angry with because we were having this conversation about if you could have any job in the world, what would you have? If you could just snap your fingers and you would have it. And I said, well, if LA ever gets an NFL football team, I'd like to be the president of it. And his immediate response without a beat is, would you even get an interview for that job? And I was like, oh my God, how could you say such an awful thing to me? Of course I should, right? Like, I was thinking about the complexity of what you do when you run a speedway and how, many different facets of the operation that you oversee and how difficult it is and how many different types of personalities you work at and that you have all of the same functions, the ticketing and the public relations and the operations and the sponsorships, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I thought, of course I should be interviewed for that job. And 2 days later, I'm still angry at him. And I'm thinking, why am I so mad? And what I realized was that what he said was 100% the truth. I would not have gotten an interview for that job. So I called him back and I said, hey, I'm really angry at you 2 days later about what you said. I told him why. And he said, well, let's get you ready then. And what we talked about was how do I create a plan to give myself more visibility in the market, to do more that puts me in a different plane and different platform. And so a lot of more community outreach. I got involved on a city commission where I worked on the convention center board. I got involved in more political type of things. I was involved more with the chamber and integrating myself with other business leaders. And all of those things really set me up so that when this opportunity did come around, I got that interview.
I think Mike from earlier would say that was one of those action items that you did, and you look back at 6 months later of something that you chose to do that's starting to show up. That's awesome. I want to go ahead and introduce one of the themes of this panel is, in my mind, kind of agility and adaptability and how from motorsports and to basketball, talk about the transitions that each of these ladies made. You were in New York City at one point and found yourself back in Virginia, grew up in Martinsville. How did you find yourself back home and why was that kind of your target?
Yeah, I wanted to get back to Martinsville to help my parents, very similar story. But I was introduced to an ally, Harvey Siegel, who had just put VIR under contract. Interviewed with Harvey, realized we had very complementary strengths and weaknesses, and that's a project big enough to get me back home. But we were both in real estate development, so we looked at VIR as a big facility real estate development that we then had to also learn how to operate the business to utilize all the facility. So that's how we, got started and opened up the historic track, divided it into two that we could run simultaneously, and we've been building ever since.
I love that you call VIR a motorsports resort. Is it almost personified in your mind? Like, is VIR kind of like a person for you?
Oh, God, yes. I bleed VIR green. I've got Michelin hair. Yes, no, it's we've talked about DNA earlier today, and we have about 300 staff, about 110 FTEs, and if they don't have VIR in their DNA in their veins, they don't really belong with us.
Beth, you transitioned from the executive side of automotive, now firmly in motorsports as a team owner. Talk about taking that leap.
First, let me just say, before I start, I apologize that I wasn't here yesterday, and I was actually in Indianapolis for 2023 planning for IndyCar. And I am so humbled to see this room so full, because when Lynn St. James and I talked last year about starting Women in Motorsport North America, I don't know that I pictured this so quickly, so thank you. So yeah, my transition, it's funny. And just to go back to like what even got me to even as high as I was in automotive, because it's a thing that I realized, it was explained to me as something that women do. So I'm going to just share this quickly. So I'd worked in automotive. I went to graduate school, got a business degree, wound up getting a job at a car dealership. I eventually am working at Volkswagen in finance, and then I'm at Aston Martin in operations, and that was just from like who I met, and you know, kind of one job led to the next. And there's a trade publication called Automotive News. I would read it every week, and there was this story about a woman who was promoted to a very high role within the industry, and seemingly kind of came out of nowhere. And I was reading her background and about her appointment, and I was talking to somebody at another magazine who's pretty well rooted in the industry, and I said to him, I said, you know, I have more experience than this woman. Like, I think I would actually be better suited for that role. And I said, you know, how do I get considered for jobs like this? And he said to me, you need to work on your visibility. And you know, and he didn't say, you know, he's like kind of spitballing and you know, work on your network, work on your visibility. And I did, and then literally within a year's time, I wound up getting this job at Fiat Chrysler, where I was running the marketing and operations, basically the business side of the SRT brand, Street and Racing Technology. So with that's the performance brand. And then with that job came the business of running all the racing programs, NASCAR, sports car, you know, ALMS, which then became IMSA, overseeing a bit of NHRA on the engineering side. And it's funny because I realized that I'd been reading automotive news for years, and I've been reading about appointments of men escalating to jobs, right? Week in and week out, who's getting promoted. And it wasn't until I saw this woman getting promoted that I thought, wait, I could be that. And it was that kind of like light bulb moment of, you always hear the thing about how women respond to seeing other women in roles. So that was a light bulb for me. And there I was now at Fiat Chrysler. So then when I decided that, I was kind of not as happy once we achieved all these championships and then had to shut the programs down. Story for another day. When you're the only person swimming against the tide to save them, it gets tiring. So I decided that, okay, as a case in point, you know, I reacted to seeing a woman as an example. So what's the solution? And I found out that actually women biologically sort of do that, and we can't change that. So what's the solution? More visible examples. That's what my team is. It's just, there are women working in racing. Many of you in this room have been working in racing for years. My idea was just to put us on one team, because then all of a sudden you see this critical mass that you didn't see before. And in fairness, somebody asked me last year, like, what made you think you could start an IndyCar team? And I literally said, it never occurred to me that I couldn't.
My husband said that to me. What makes you think you can do this? I
Right.
said, what makes you think I can't?
I mean, you know. Exactly.
Was that the end?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
It was the last one.
So yeah, sometimes you're the biggest voice in your head, and so if you can kind of convince the voice inside your head to be your friend, you're going to probably be successful. So pivoting to this, I mean, listen, it's just like what you said. You know, I had a business unit that I was running. You know, a big P&L that I was responsible for. You know, I managed people. This is no different.
Victoria, you made the transition from, I know you had several businesses. You're an accountant by trade. You're now part of a race team. Did you see that happening for yourself?
Oh my gosh, no. And you should hear my mom talk about it. Originally growing up, if you had met me, you would think that I'd be a dancer or an actress, and I turned out to be an accountant. So that they were shocked about as well. And my transition into this world was I was hired, I owned an accounting firm, and I was hired to determine the profitability of the different departments of Kelly Moss. So everything rolled into one checking account. They didn't have any idea if they were losing $200,000 a year in the body shop and, you know, making $400,000 a year in the racing. And quite honestly, it was literally the opposite of that. And so I came on board to determine the profitability. They were just one of many clients. I had 4 women that worked for me full time. I had, I remember, 53 private clients that I did. They were just another client. And the results that I presented after my assessment of the business resulted in them extending an offer to me to come on board full time. I turned down 7 offers, and at the 8th offer, I was like, this sounds pretty fantastic. I think I'll join. And my passion for motorsports, and particularly the brand of Porsche, literally came from my financial mind and seeing the appreciation of the cars, and recognizing the value of personally investing, and what a great place for my money to be, something I can drive and enjoy, and then make money in a couple of years when I sell it. And then also the safety features, watching the guys crash. But the more I got involved in it, the more passionate I became about it. And I used to speak all around the United States because I was incredibly passionate about debits and credits, and I could articulate that in a way that people actually listened to instead of falling asleep. So I did a lot of speaking to business owners, and I was very, very passionate about the scorecard of your business, and I still use that every single day to make our business more successful. But the more I became involved in motorsports, the more passionate I became about it. And we were just talking just a few moments ago before this about I'm the one that's at the podium crying. There's no way in the world I'm going to stifle my enthusiasm about our success by not being the one that's crying. I think it's crazy that anybody would expect me to, and I say that to all of the women that are becoming part of our team. Oh my gosh, we are experiencing sheer joy. Cry, right?
I cried on national television after he qualified for the Indy 500.
Yes. Good for you.
You guys may have noticed when I introduced the 4 ladies on stage that each of them have the title president. Was that word ever intimidating to you?
I'm actually CEO and co-owner, but
Same.
Do you want to drop that mic, Connie?
but no, I grew up always wanting to be an entrepreneur and wanting to be my own boss. And as my son says, I have to because I can't work for anybody else. So it's all about collaborating and surrounding myself with people who are better than I am to make me the best I can be, which is presently co-owner and CEO.
I won't mess that one up next time, Connie.
I thought, where's Kerrigan?
The title didn't make me scared. Having my family name on my shirt and my trucks and my car comes with it a big responsibility. My parents are no longer here, so that's why I did it, was to sort of honor them and honor my family. But I will tell you that it's weird when you see people walking around, because we sell fan T-shirts and stuff like that, and you see your name on people's shirts, and that takes some getting used to.
I'm actually CFO and co-owner as well, so I never had any fear about that. And part of the reason for that is I honestly believe that I value failure in a different way than we were raised and taught to. That moment when you experience fear and when you have failure is something that I absolutely believe you need to lean into. All of the growth happens through failure. And I'll tell you a really short, honest story. Not a month and a half ago, and actually the statistics that you gave about the 100 race wins and the 4 national championships was for this year, not for our history. So we actually have 35 national championships. But we were at Road America and kicking butt and having a great race and leading the championship, and everything was going fantastic. And because of Kelly Moss's success, frequently we come under scrutiny in terms of we're cheating. The truth of the matter is we've been doing this since 1988, and we've been bringing in full teams of engineers. We just have more data to look at. The cars are all the same, but we have reams of data, and we actually analyze it so we can utilize utilize that for our competitive advantage. So very frequently we're torn apart in tech, and we always laugh about it, bring it on. There's no way in the world we would ever sacrifice our integrity for a race win. So we were at Road America, and I was getting all dressed up, and we were getting ready to have a night out with our clients, and I got a phone call from my husband, and he said, "Hey, I just want you to let you know we failed tech." I'm like, "Excuse me? We failed tech?" And he said, "We failed tech, and our 2 front runners, which were in position 1 and 2, were sent to the back of the grid." And so what it turned out had happened, it was a non-performance change. We were having radiator punctures over and over and over again. The lead technicians in our race shop took the tip off of the light so that it was dulled instead of pointed, so when there's impact to the front, it didn't puncture the radiator. A brilliant solution that Porsche is going to be enhancing their cars with next year, not allowable. So the truth was, we failed tech. We made a change in a car we were not allowed to. The 2 days after that, I was supposed to be doing a presentation for our sponsor about how you utilize failure to fuel your success. So I'm standing in my living room, and I kid you not, I'm head down into my chair, butt up, going, "Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, what are we gonna do?" And I said, this is failure, and this will fuel our success. And, called the team together. I called Jeremy Shaw and said, "Please come to the tent. I want to have a public conversation with you about this." We showed him what we did, took 100% responsibility for the fact that we had a culture that had technicians that didn't recognize the severity of a change, and that was on us as owners. And we were very public about all of it, and I absolutely used that failure. I think that when you can't be scared if you know that no matter what happens, it makes you stronger.
Well done. Gillian, you and Beth both mentioned putting yourselves in a position for the next job, for the next level. When you kind of bring that praise on yourself, or I had Lori Eberhard, I don't know if she's in here, but she was on the podcast one time, and she talked about the intention of celebrating your success. Were you comfortable with that in the beginning?
No, I'm not comfortable with it ever. Not today. Even when you're saying praise, I don't think that that's how I went about it. It wasn't about glorifying myself. It was really about putting myself in a position to develop a network that was way more powerful than the one that I had. And I think that at any stage in your career that there are opportunities that present itself. I actually share this anecdote with our players as well. So, they're at the height of their popularity when they're playing. They're also very, very focused on what they're doing. And so their heads are down, and they want to win and put their best foot forward every single day. But it's also their biggest opportunity for them to develop a network for their future. And these guys are done playing, and they're still very young men. So the idea that, you have your head down the whole time, and by the time you look up, it's at the very, very tail end of your career where you're trying to make the connections that you'll need to make for the next stage. And that's the same advice that I would give to anyone, male or female, but it's the one that I wasn't taking myself.
I was talking to somebody yesterday, and I was asking them about their career, and it was interesting to hear the way they were speaking about their own career. It was a woman, and she was really downplaying her own accomplishments. And so much so that I was noticing it, right? Sometimes we have 100 conversations a day, and you might not really kind of pick up on this. And we have to you should be your biggest cheerleader. And I think sometimes we're conditioned to think that we don't want to come off as boastful or bragging. But sometimes there are things that we've actually achieved. There came a point where, I would feel bad if my parents had said something that was like, "Oh, we're so proud of you." I felt like it was just like boastful. And the funny thing is, not to stereotype, but sometimes there are guys who I have worked with that will be taking credit for things that were a group project, and that sort of thing. But then they start climbing up that ladder, and you see them climbing up that ladder. And I'm not saying that any of us should do that, but don't do the other thing either. Don't, women for years have thought, if I just, we like to be over qualified for a job. We keep our head down and work hard and think, well, the boss will notice how hard I'm working and how good I am, and that's how I'm going to get promoted. It's not going to happen. And then your, cubicle neighbor who's totally phoning it in, but is going to lunch with the boss, is getting elevated up the line, right? And we've all seen it. So it's somewhere in the middle. Work hard, but be okay and be comfortable with pointing out something that you did. One thing that women also do, we always say we. It's okay to say I, if it was you. Don't say I if it was we. But I think just we generally will say like, well, we did this and we did that, and there's like this inference that there's that you're a team of 1,000 when oftentimes it is just you and you are working late. So I'd say it's okay to self-promote a bit, not too much. Your friends will keep you in check, but it's still weird. Like you look at like the accomplishments, like even like you reading the stuff that in my career, I mean, it sounds like a lot. I mean, it was just my life, and I was just kind of, and I was part of teams, right? Like I didn't win a NASCAR Cup championship. I was part of a team that did. Clearly, you guys would, I'll be wearing that T-shirt with my face on it, right? But I think even when you're early in your career or in the middle of your career, it's sometimes even your word choice. Like think of how you write a resume. And you figure out like the strong words and the verbs that you use and the adjectives that you use. Do that in the way that you're talking to somebody. Here's a networking event where you're here today. So talk about the things that you've done or things that you've been part of. Again, like if you are part of a team, talk about that. But don't look down at your shoes when you're telling me about it.
I think hearing that, I think it kind of opens up a natural discussion into the two words that have been talked about over the last couple of years, but imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
And the discussion of, do I belong here? Why do I belong here? And this is for each of you. Do you still struggle with some of those internal questions? And if it's over for you, how did you get there?
I never really struggled with those questions. I just kept looking for answers. And that involves being vulnerable, putting yourself out there, being willing to take risk, and being able to take advice. If you ask questions and you're given advice and you never listen to it, then you're just an asshole. So take that good advice.
Connie, I love your spunk, your personality. But seriously, you have this innate belief in self. Where do you attribute that to?
My sister and I are both self-employed. She's got a marketing agency in Atlanta for cause marketing, and I own a racetrack. I mean, I think we were encouraged at a young age and throughout our life that whatever we wanted to do, we could. And we just kept gravitating to what really made us happy and where we found success and could also help others. So that's it.
Beth, imposter syndrome, does it affect you?
Yeah, I mean, it's ridiculous. Like, I mean, literally, when I was at Mid-Ohio and, or was it, no, Road America this year, and it was the first time that I saw a transporter with my name on it, right? And I laugh hysterically, like, how is any of this possible? And like, they're gonna kick me out. And I just see it and I laugh, I remember because we weren't in the first race of this, a couple of races early in the season. I'm watching from home and I'm like, oh my gosh, like I have one of those cars, but I think it's good to laugh at yourself, but understand, because you're like, does Roger Penske have imposter syndrome? I mean, I hope that he did at some point, because case in point, if you don't have a little bit of it, then you're a narcissist. There's definitely times that like I just more laugh at myself, and I grew up in a family where like comedy was like a measure of your worth, so it's a coping mechanism, But no, I think you should have a little bit of it is healthy, because if you don't, to quote the great Connie Nyholm, you're a you know what.
apparently I'm kind of a, you know what? I truly haven't really struggled with imposter syndrome. And it might be just the way that I frame what that means in my head. There was this epiphany that happened somewhere around, my early 30s where it was like, it's not possible to have all the answers. I mean, I remember being young and being in customer service and the phone rings and they say, XYZ, and you just feel this anxiety fill you like, oh my gosh, I don't know the answer. I'm on the phone and I don't know the answer. It's completely acceptable to say, I'm sorry, I don't know the answer, but I can assure you that I can get you the answer. How freeing is that? So I feel that way in life. I mean, even in the conversations we've had here, people will talk to me about different race teams, different tracks. I've been so head down in my tenure, I haven't lifted my head up to pay attention to what anybody else is doing. And the fact that I lifted my head a year ago, thanks to Lynn St. James, I really focused on what I was doing and recognized that I don't have to do it perfectly. It's not possible to do it perfectly. I just have to be honest about what I'm doing, do it with integrity, and do the best that I can.
Well, I certainly have it. I think most people do, male and female. I'm in a CEO group with a lot of men, and we've even talked about it and how it sort of exists for everyone. But I'm remembering a story where I was invited to be in a room of some very high-level people, and I remember looking around the room when I walked in for the first time and thinking, oh my God, look at these people. How did I get here? I just thought, oh my God, this is amazing. And then after several years of being part of this organization, I remember walking in the room and looking around and thinking, how did they get here? And I think it happens in a lot of situations. You look around and if you ever have spent any time around celebrities, or all of you probably have a lot of interaction with race car drivers, and you see the way fans react to them, and you look at them and think, this is my friend, or, this guy, well, if they really knew what he was like, whatever that might be. So I think it's really about the idea of recognizing that you're not alone, that whatever you're feeling, whether you're feeling imposter syndrome or you're feeling on top of the world, that there's probably somebody else who's feeling exactly what you're feeling, and there's probably somebody else who's feeling exactly the opposite.
You guys were discussing the emotion of crying in the winner's circle or crying after qualifying at the Indianapolis 500. Women's emotion is discussed a lot, especially when it comes to executive roles, when it comes to, there's no doubt each of you have to have difficult and tough conversations with colleagues, co-workers. Can women show emotion, difficult emotion?
I think you can show emotion in certain situations. I mean, you qualify for a big time race, of course you should show emotion. Men do, right? And if you're in a situation where you've won a championship, of course you're going to do that. If you're somebody who struggles with controlling your emotions in day-to-day business situations, that can be problematic, whether you're a male or a female. And so I think it's really about thinking about how you show up, and is it right for that moment? And if it is, then great. And if it's not, there's so many techniques that you can learn on how to adapt and how to behave in those kinds of situations that can help. And certainly I've had a lot of women that have worked for me at various different points in their career where this has been a challenge for them. And there's a lot of coaching that you can get that help you through those kinds of situations so that you can become everything that you're capable of becoming. But, if you're very emotional in critical situations, that's probably not a plus.
I think in one way we're sort of lucky. Some of the women that are attracted to this industry might be kind of a certain type. We tend to be go-getters, type A. So the emotion side might be a little bit different just based on who's attracted to what we're doing. But I will say it's an unfortunate label because there's this connotation that emotional is negative. But further to that, I have worked with some very emotional men who, it's not a fair label to give to a gender when we all have examples of, guys that are getting really moody about something, and we've all seen that. So I think it's just, and hopefully those labels kind of start shedding themselves when you see more of us achieving things and working together and all of that. Hopefully all that stuff every few years those things erode.
Yeah, I'd want to go back into the room when you had to have the discussion with your team about the tech failure. I would imagine that was a difficult conversation that you had to have, Victoria.
Oh yeah, it was very difficult, and I was emotional. I mean, I wasn't mad, but it was, we failed here, people. We failed, and that is utterly unacceptable. The reason that we have the success that we have is people expect better of us. How did this happen? How do we prevent it in the future? That said, we win and lose as a team, and it was an opportunity to show genuinely 100% we're a team under all circumstances, not just when we win. We are a team together even when we fail. And so I feel like the other side of that was cultural reinforcement and really standing behind what we say. So it turned out to be, of course, a good thing. There's always positive that you can find from it. But I mean, as emotional as I was, the gentleman that the team of people that was responsible for that decision, incredibly emotional. Yeah, it was hard.
Well, Connie, I have zero doubt that you lead your ship.
And I've never cried over anything but talking about my team. When I talk about VIR and our team who's made it everything that it is today and where we aspire to be, then I get emotional.
I do want to open this up to an interactive room. I know we're going to have some hot mics that can be passed around, so while we get those ready, if you have any questions, prepare those. Hands up, I see you. Don't be discouraged, go for it. It's coming to you.
Hi, Maddie again. I work for Chevy Racing. One question I have is, there's often this like imaginary timeline imposed on us as women and people in general. Like, you know, I turned 30 this year, and I feel like there's some imaginary pressure, like you have to pick your career, you have to decide when you're gonna have kids, like you should already have these degrees and things like that. Have you ever had any moments in your life where you feel like, oh my gosh, I haven't made the timeline, like I set all these goals, I'm not where I'm supposed to be, and like how do you overcome that, especially as many of you have transitioned into completely different careers later on? How do you overcome that?
I'm in my third career, and I was in my first when I was 30. But I've also never had a 5-year plan. I never have. And obviously, everybody's different. So sometimes people need to be planned out. It's like people that need to know the gender of their kid right before they're born, and other people, no, you know. And I get it. Everybody's different. So what has worked for me might not work for somebody else. But for me, I never had a 5-year plan. What that allowed for me was my life is not how I would have ever written it down and imagined. I couldn't have expected this. So along the way, it was be open to opportunity. When people call and say, "Hey, I'd like to talk to you about a job," even if though you're not looking for a job, okay, yeah, I'll sit down with you and I'll listen. And each of my jobs, from my first job, I was working at a car dealership. Every job after that, I was recruited. And so, you know, somebody's calling me about it, and I wasn't looking. And so, I think, you know, you kind of, you know, obviously you're making good decisions as they appear, and that doesn't mean that you let life happen to you either. I mean, you're actively working and you're networking and building, you know, and connecting to all these people so that when you do need advice or you do need a reference, you know, people that you're meeting today, hopefully you're going to know them for the rest of your career. And with that, I should also say, building the network is probably the most important asset that you have, but you need to be a good member of your own network. So maintain it. Reach out to people. If they ask you for help, you help them. And it does, like, it pays itself, you know, forward in time. But I've always sort of been, you know, I don't want to say, you know, just drifting along, because that makes it sound like I'm, you know, have no drive. But I think there's something to be said for like shedding that. I mean, certainly, if you want to get married and have kids, there's something there that you have to think about, like timing wise. But other than that, I wouldn't put any pressure on yourself professionally about where you think you need to be, my opinion.
And tagging on to that, don't be afraid to say no. I mean, sometimes it's even more important to say no to an opportunity than yes, because it's going to take that time away from the other path that you're pursuing.
I think I saw a hand on this side. Okay.
Hello, my name is Aaron Walsh, and I'm with like RTR Vehicles and Formula Drift. And earlier this year, I went to my first motorsports event, and I was in the hot pits, and I looked around, and I was the only woman, and it felt really, really cool. But then someone made a comment like, oh, shouldn't you be one of the umbrella girls? Or, yeah. And I guess my question, and something that like I've been really passionate about lately, is how we break the script and the narrative that women in motorsports are like hypersexualized and we're just sex symbols. I know you guys have been in this for a really long time, so do you guys have any thoughts on that or how we break that down?
Have you seen me standing up? I mean, not a problem.
Beth, I think you could, I go back to, you had women going over the wall at the Indianapolis 500. I think that could be a great segue here.
Yeah, so last year my intention about the team is that we wanted to have this professional IndyCar team, women in as many roles as possible. But in fairness, there weren't enough women available to make a full professional level team that I could poach from other series or teams. So I actually hired women last year with the help of Team Penske, and we had 6. We started with 9, whittled it down to 6 women who we hired February 1st. And of last year, right? So the Indy 500 for everybody, it was May 30th, 2021. So February, we hired these women who were rookies. They were athletes. Some of them had some motorsport experience, but they'd never been on an IndyCar team. And a few of them had gone through like the NASCAR pit school years before. But basically, we took these 6 women. They went through intense training. What's amazing about these women is this was, of course, part-time. So they all had full-time jobs. A couple of them were moms. So the common time that these 6 women had was at 5 a.m. in the morning. And so they went to Team Penske, and they went through, they have it set up, where they're going through basically like a pit school training. So they're doing that, and then also working out in the gym there, and then going on with the rest of their day. For perspective, an IndyCar pit stop is you have to be basically 6 seconds or less. It takes 6.2 seconds to fuel the car. So you've got to change the tires, take off the tear off, fuel the car in 6 seconds or less. What's great about that is that's the constraint, right? So like if we can do it at 5.8, but the team next to me can do it in 5.5, whatever. We're still in the zone, right? So they're training to get to 6 seconds. When they started their first, so you start like on a static car where they just jack it up, boom, change tires, and put it back down, over and over and over again. It's videotaped. They watch it over and over again. If you obviously know what a pit stop's like, it's the fluidity of movement, the economy of movement. It's like a ballet. And the first pit stop that they did on a static car, they did it in 18 seconds. If we did it, we'd do it in like 30. So like 18, but 18 is, it's way too long, right? So they just worked over and over and over again, worked on that movement, the repetitiveness, and eventually those times came down more and more and more. And then, okay, so that's just a static car. Now we're going to take the electric car, and now it's rolling in, right? Because then they have to still learn about, okay, it rolls in, it might not be right on the mark. How do you work around the car? All of that. They did that over and over and over again. Then you go outdoors, and then it's a live car. So each of these steps, you're introducing another variable: noise, smell. Again, driver coming in too short, too long. So my goal was to have 4 women go over the wall. There's 7 people on a pit stop in IndyCar, 7 over the wall. And then there's also roles behind the wall. Retrieving the tire, retrieving the hoses, somebody with a fire extinguisher, somebody that's the dead man. Dead man is the worst name, by the way. So we had a dead woman. But with that, my goal was, again, this visibility and the reason for that. So what's amazing, though, is people kept asking me as it was getting closer to the 500, because we had the open test, and then we had, practice days, and, you're there for, we call it the month of May. It's now, sadly, like 2.5 weeks of May. But each of these practice days, there's more and more people in the stands, and people kept asking me, journalists kept asking, how many women are going to go over the wall on race day? And I wouldn't tell them on purpose. My goal was 4. My goal was always 4. The reason not 7 is because there's some roles that are like, that's a very experienced guy, like the guy, anybody. It's like you've been doing this for years when you ascend to be the car chief, for instance. So my goal was 4. And we're practicing, the crowds are getting bigger with each passing day, and I'm keeping an eye on these women to make sure that they're not getting, this is like a bit of sports psychology. Are they noticing that the crowds are getting bigger? Because we were a curiosity. Everybody's wondering if we're going to succeed or fail. And on race day, that morning, I made the decision that, so I said we had 6, so we knew who the 4 were that we're going to go over, and then the other 2 are behind the wall. And on race morning, I made the decision, they're ready. They can do this. So it's these 4 are going to go over the wall. And I did finally say to a journalist before the race started, we're going to have 4. Race starts. It's like 30 laps in, whatever. We're going to take our first pit stop. And so the car comes in. Simona De Silvestro pulls in. There's pit stop happens. She tears out of the box, goes down pit lane. And, I'm standing on the timing stand. I've got my headset on. It's noise canceling. I got all the different feeds. Like I'm hearing the spotter. I'm hearing this. I'm hearing that. And then all of a sudden, I'm like, what is that noise? And I lifted the headset off my head, and I realized that there was this roar of the crowd. And I was like, what is that? And I didn't realize that our pit stop was on the Jumbotron. And there's that moment when the car comes in that literally everyone's like, here it goes. And it's that, is it going to be success or failure? And what I'm proudest of, I'm proudest of, qualifying, but I'm proudest of that pit stop. Because what that shows everybody is that with the right intention, interest, aptitude, hard work, if you're supported and you're given the training and the tools, you can achieve anything. These women were hired February 1st. When we went to the open test in April, it occurred to me as they were walking in for the open test, which is closed to the public, it's just open for all the teams. None of these women had been at Indianapolis Motor Speedway in their lives. And their first time walking in, they're on a team. And they're expected that in a month and a half's time, they're going to pit a car in the Indy 500. And believe me, when the car was coming in, imposter syndrome, butterflies, if we fuck this up, I've set all of you back. And that isn't lost on me in that moment. I never said it out loud in front of them, but I thought it. And they did it in less than 5 seconds.
Wow.
So the best part of that, though, is I have a photo of that. It's in my living room on the wall, blown up, because if you actually look closely and you count, and I could point it out, there are 11 women working in that pit stop. Lauren Sullivan was right there. She was our performance engineer. And the best is if you zoom in and you see these women over the wall, you can see the ponytails out of the back of their helmets. So I think that's how we do it. We just keep showing them that we're more or different. With all due to flag girls, they have rent to pay. But Formula One got rid of it. I mean, it was my best moment at Fiat Chrysler when we had the Viper program, we had this older gentleman who was in charge of the engine program. And he was about a year away from retirement. And I bestowed upon him the honor of selecting the flag girl for every race, because there was literally a staffing agency that would send headshots. And I would just go to him and be like, pick one. And because we were required to have one. So I sadly had to be part of that at one point. And even like when we have auto shows, dressing the models for the auto show, right? And how tight and how short is the skirt? I'm like, I want this woman to look like she can get in the car and drive it off the stand. And the guys that were, putting together the costumes for the spokesmodels did not like me.
We're sadly out of time.
Sorry.
But no, it's a good point. I think we've used the word visibility over the last 2 days of finding, seeing. Linda talked yesterday about the importance of being able to see women in roles, and it's exactly what you did with having women across the wall and being visible. And I'm so glad they put it on the Jumbotron for that moment, because what a moment for everybody to see that. So I wish we had time for...
We have a quick announcement to make.
I'm going to make this super quick. A quick announcement. I have been waiting until this event because I promised Cindy that I would. But what's coming out in the press today is that Kelly Moss is going to be funding a seat for a female driver in Porsche Carrera Cup North America. We are blessed to have more wins in the 992 than any other company in the world. We've had more GT3 Cup wins than anyone else. And so we invited 12 women from around the world to come and submit an application for us. The top 4 will be taken to Putnam Park, and we feel like we really have an opportunity to provide a team that can back a woman to bring them success. And I'm super happy to tell you that there are a lot of those women in the room today, and I would be incredibly shocked if we're not talking about their success at this event next year.
If I had a roving camera, I would put the ISO shot on Lynn St. James right now, because I'm sure she is smiling somewhere. And I want to close this real quickly. There were 3 girls, younger women, that came to me prior to this panel. Can you stand up, please? And I want to go from the question that was asked over here. And I want you to know that your impatience is tied to your ambition. You're not going to be the production assistant. You're not going to be the runner. You're not going to be the lowest on the totem pole forever. And if these women have anything that they've shown you today, is that your career will evolve and you will be sitting here one day. Well done.